Okay, great. So there's lots of neat new features in Vectorworks 2022, and a lot of them have gotten some exposure. In fact, I think last month, didn't we talk about textures and the new texture mapping, which is pretty cool. And before that, we talked about wall closure or wall returns, however you want to say it. So I thought I would maybe focus on some slightly more prosaic features this time, just because I think it tends to be those features that they may not be very splashy, but they're the ones that you end up using again and again. And, you know, I remember years and years ago when instead of having to command left bracket or right bracket to left bracket to edit a group or edit a symbol, you could just double click on it. I mean, that was such a simple little thing, right? And I use that all the time. And so I wanted to focus on some features like that. Most of these are actually new to 2022. Actually, one or two are older, but they're worth being reminded of. So the first one is something that I have really happy to see because it really makes schematic design a lot easier. So I've drawn this rectangle here, and if I look at the Reshape tool, which is this tool right over here. Wait, can you guys see that, or is it off the screen? Here, let me move it in. Can you see the Reshape, my palette with the Reshape tool? Great.
You can see it.
All right, terrific. Thank you. So there's the Reshape tool. Yours may be in a slightly different position because I've got a custom workspace going. Before 2022, the Reshape tool did not work on rectangles. If you had to convert a rectangle to a polygon, and then it's, well, no longer a rectangle, it's a polygon. So the Reshape tool, you may note, has this new mode right over here. It's the third mode from the left, and it's the move edges and preserve mode. I've tried it with like triangles and pentagons. I think it only works on quadrilaterals. And what it does is when you reshape an edge, it preserves the total area of the rectangle. All right, so let me pull up my object info palette, which is over here. Can you guys see my OIP? So I've drawn, yes, can you guys see it?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. All right, I'm looking over there because the rest of the office is over here watching on another computer, in case you're wondering. So you see I've created this rectangle. I've made it 13 feet by 17 feet. And it's got a surface area of 221 square feet. So as I reshape it, right, it's just some arbitrary distance, right? But notice that the area is still 221. So no matter how I reshape it in this mode, I can either reshape it this way or that way if I grab a corner, or I can reshape it from one edge or another. You know, it's like a water bed. You push down in one area and it's going to come up the other. So if you're doing some quick kind of digital bubble diagrams where you've got programmatic areas, obviously you could use spaces, right? But if you just want to do something quick and dirty and just use rectangles for your concept layout, whatever, partee, substitute, you know, fancy architectural term of your choosing, then this is really great because you can define the area based on your programmatic requirements, and then just reshape it to fit with everything else. So that's really nice. I think that's probably a minor feature that would not get noticed, but I like it. So that's one. Another one here is the repeat and recent commands. And this is one that I think Photoshop, maybe I noticed a feature like this many years ago. So I will say this is something that I did have requested. I don't know if that's I don't want to take credit for this. I'm just saying this is something that I think has been lacking, or at least it's nice to have. So if you go to a standard workspace, let's go ahead and change. I'm going to change my workspace to the architect workspace, just because mine might be out of date. And you can see that under the edit menu, there's recent commands and repeat last commands. Repeat last command is grayed out because we haven't done any commands, but recent commands, it's going to give you a list here. And I think that I actually added that to my own workspace. Let's see if I remember to do that. Yeah, you know what? For some reason, I couldn't get that recent commands to pop up. So we'll go back to the architect workspace. All right. So let's say I've got a rectangle and I rotate it left. You see, I just did a rotate left command here, right? And so now under recent commands, you'll see rotate left 90 degrees is there, or I can just go ahead and rotate left 90 degrees. So if you find yourself using the same or a certain set of commands over and over again, they're going to show up there. And the nice thing is that you can right click, and if you if you use a standard workspace like this one, it's already in the contextual menu. And if you have your own custom workspace, you can add it to it. So let me show you how to do that. So there's my workspace. I'm going to edit the current workspace. And then you can see that there's menus, tools, keys. We're going to get back to this, by the way, and towards the end. So that's why I'm bringing it up now. And you can see that under menus, you've got your file, your edit, your view, modify, model, so on and so forth. But at the bottom, there's document context and object context. All right. So for those of you who don't use context menus, or don't customize them, this is super useful. So the document context is what you get if you click sort of in the drawing area or somewhere in the drawing area without hovering over any object. So click over empty space and you right click. Then this document context menu will pop up and you can define what goes in that menu, right? Over here in your workspace editor. So you can see that I've got repeat last command over here. Then all of your commands are on the right, or on the left, sorry. So new menu items. Here's recent commands. Let's see. See, it won't let me carry it over. I have to talk to tech support about that. And so I've just put it over here under my quick search, right? And so now if I click onto empty space, you can see that let's right click here. Because the last thing I did, I was confused by the current workspace. The last command I performed was edit current workspace. So there it is. So in other words, you can get this repeat recent or repeat last command either by right clicking onto empty space and getting it from your contextual menu, all right, or you can get it right here from the edit menu up here. Looking to see no chats, okay. And again, this applies to commands, right? So there's it's going to be a menu item. It's not going to invoke the latest tool. You'll want boomerang mode for that. So not tools that live on palettes, but commands that are in the menus down here. And there are certain commands that you can't repeat. And if you check the documentation, there's a list of them that are not eligible for this feature for some reason or another. The next one is pretty obscure, and I Love it. So I've drawn a polygon here and I've given it a particular fill and opacity, pen style, color, opacity, line weight, so on and so forth. And what I can do is this is only a contextual menu command. So I have to hover over the object. It doesn't have to be selected, right? I just have to hover over it and right click. And so you'll see that if I can find it. So right here, there's two new commands: create class using object attributes or update class attributes from the object. So I'll go ahead and create class using object attributes. And I'll go ahead and give it a class name. Okay. And I can make it like any new class, I can make it visible, gray, whatever. Let's make it visible. And if I edit properties after creation, which I don't have to do, you can see that Vectorworks has already populated the class attributes with the attributes of the object that we were hovering over when we invoked this command. So I'll hit OK. And so now in my classes menu, you can see that I've got this pen class 0.015 millimeters. So then I may decide, I made it 0.15, but this object is actually 0.3. So I can change its attributes. And then again, it doesn't have to be selected, but if I hover over it and right click, I can now update class attributes from the object. And so it immediately pulls up the class that this object is assigned to. And I can specify which of these attributes, fill, pen, drop, shadow, whatever, I want to assign to this class. But notice there's a pull down menu. So I could go ahead and, in a sense, use this almost as I don't have to update the class of that particular object. I can update other classes with that object's attributes. That's kind of a mouthful. So there we go. And so now you can see everything is by class here. And in fact, if I go back and look at this pen class, sure enough, it's red, 0.15 millimeter. We're off to the races. So that's kind of a nice way of creating classes if you don't want to go to the class menu and click new and give it a name and go through all of that, right? You can do that just directly from the attributes column. So it's kind of a shortcut. Or if there's something that you've drawn and you want to, you're playing with your line weights, or you can't quite decide, how much opacity do I really want here? Maybe I want 31%. No, that's not quite okay. Yeah, that's good, right? So I'm just kind of playing with it graphically here, and I can sort of see the opacity. It might help if I picked a different color. Right? I can sort of play with the opacity, right? And I can decide and establish, okay, that's nice. And now that I've sort of used the drawing area to actually fine tune my graphics, now I can go ahead and update the attributes from that object, and there it is. So that's pretty nice. Okay. Okay, this next one is actually an old feature. It's really old, and it's one that I actually, I have to admit, found out about like years after it was available. And for this feature to work, which is the reason that I didn't know about it, you have to have under your Vectorworks preferences, you have to have offset duplications turned on. Now, normally, if you have offset duplications turned on, and if you duplicate an object, it duplicates it to the right and up by, I don't know, like 20 pixels or 30 pixels. It's the reason that I don't have this setting turned on, because it doesn't offset it by a real world dimension. So it's hard to predict how much it offsets it. And so I generally have this turned off. But if you have offset duplications turned on, right? If instead of doing an offset, if you hold down the Option key and do a drag duplicate, right? So if you hold down the Option key and drag an object, that duplicates it, right? If the next thing that you do is duplicate, Control D for Command D for me, it'll duplicate it by the amount that you dragged it exactly. So that's really nice if you, have an abundant love of hexagons like I do, and you want to just, create a whole field of tiles. So it's kind of a nice little feature. And again, you've got to have, you've got to have offset duplications turned on for this to work. If you don't, all right, if you don't, I can go ahead and offset. I can do that drag duplication and hit Control D, but nothing happens. I mean, something did happen. It created a duplicate, but it stacked it right on top. So an oldie, but goodie. The next one, boy, I should probably use a more intense model for this. This is new, and I think we're going to love it. This is the chair that I've used again and again on several user group meetings, right? And so we know that in 2022, OpenGL has been replaced by something called Shaded because OpenGL has been deprecated by Apple, and so Shaded uses a different rendering method under the hood, but it looks almost exactly like OpenGL. So for a long time now, we've had sort of live OpenGL, which is why I spend so much time in OpenGL. Here, let me change my rendering options, because honestly, who wants, there we go. Now that curve actually almost looks like a curve. So there we go. So that's fine. But now, not for everything, but for design layers and certain viewports, if I do a hidden line rendering, there it is, right? That's live, just about. So you can be working while you're doing hidden line renderings, and right, it's going to go ahead and do its thing. So let's try that in another file that I have open for a future one. Can you guys see the other drawing? Yeah. So that's a shaded rendering, right? And let's try an OpenGL. There you go. Or hidden line, sorry. Now notice it didn't like the clip cube. It turned off the clip cube in hidden line rendering, but it's doing a hidden line rendering in, it may not actually be real time, but I can't tell the difference. That's pretty awesome, I think. And if you've got like a viewport with a perspective that isn't clipped, or it's not a section viewport, right, then you can be updating your viewport and continue to work, and that'll just happen in the background. So that's pretty cool. All right, back to my other file. The next one, I gotta confess, is actually getting a little bit of publicity. Here's a site model. I've got it on a clip cube, so you can see that it's just, kind of hollowed out. Look underneath, there it is. Regular old site model. In 2022, they're called components, but I think a better name for them is probably strata. Anyway, my 2 cents. We've got components added to site model. So here's the same site model. I'm going to click on it, and if I look at site model settings, you can see that now, in addition to general 2D and 3D display, there's this component tag, the tab that's been added. And so I can edit components. And so here I've just pulled in, I just created some components. I'm not a civil engineer, and so probably my choices are poor. But you get the idea. I created some new components. If I just edit one, you can see that I use the material feature. You don't have to, but I use the material feature in Vectorworks to pick turf grass from the site hardscape library of materials that ships with Vectorworks. Gave it a thickness of 3 inches. I could make it 4, whatever. It automatically assigns a texture based on that, but I could change that. Right. I could make the topsoil a little deeper than 10 inches. That's probably optimistic, I'm guessing, right? And so now if we zoom in, you can see, let me turn off the clip cube. If you zoom in, you can see that Vectorworks has added these stratifications to the site model. And that bottom one is 10 feet, and I made it tapered. So it just sort of follows the site model, but I could certainly make it deeper. And so some of these can be tapered, or they can be constant, kind of like with sloped slabs. And so if you want your sections to be a little bit more credible, it's clipped, so that probably won't work. Well, let's try it in hidden line. Yeah. So you can see in hidden line that those stratifications are showing up in my hidden line view. All right. And if I had a viewport, then they would, whatever, if there was a fill or a hatch pattern associated with those, then they would show up. So hopefully that'll save us a little bit from having to sort of take a viewport and just sort of annotate it with different strata showing, the foundation going at least 6 inches into limestone, or however you might use it. There's also a under the site tool, which I have not played with. Let me see if I can find it. Might not be in this palette. Let's go to settings. I could have these. Oh yeah, if I edit these geological survey points, then I can add these survey points. So for example, if I had a soils report, right, I could add one of these points as part of the site data and define some depths. And so here we go. At that one point, I could make the turf different, the topsoil different, the subsoil different, the rock different. All right, so if I get my soils report, I could go ahead and get a sense of how that site is actually stratified, add some components with some appropriate materials, or create my own materials if they're not in the library. And then I would have like a pretty credible section through the site model.
Well, adding survey points, that itself isn't new, is it?
I don't know.
I kind of remember it from before, but of course now it applies to more component layers.
Right. Yeah. Having the component thicknesses, that's definitely new.
Yeah.
I've certainly added stake objects to site models. I don't recall using survey points per se.
Okay. I don't use steaks. I use pork chops. I can't afford steak. So
I recommend chicken. It's very lean. So many ways to prepare it. I'll share a recipe with you later. Okay. All right. So I confess I haven't really played with the survey point, but maybe somebody who's more landscape oriented wants to play with this and make this a topic for a more in-depth user group meeting in the future. I would certainly welcome that. All right, I want to go back to this file that I was looking at earlier, just because it has a worksheet in it. So this is a worksheet that I've made quite some time ago. A few years ago. And there's some really nice worksheet improvements in 2022. This is the kind of stuff that is not glamorous at all. But you'll notice, I don't know how well you guys can see what's going on.
Is that formatting of code?
Yes. Yeah. So prior to 2022, whenever you did your formulas, and I mean, this is not a particularly hairy formula, but you can see that with all the parentheses and the commands and so forth, you could easily get lost. And I can't tell you how many times I've built a worksheet like this, and I hit return and I get, the little hashtags because my syntax is incorrect or whatever. And so now the code in the worksheet line here is color coded, which is just visually a pretty big help. I'm excited about that. And then if it's a really long one, you can expand this little window and it'll wrap, so you don't have to like scroll to the right and can't see what's going on the left and so forth. So again, it's a minor thing, but if you're a worksheet person, this is pretty.
That's pretty major. Does it highlight? Does it so as you're typing, does it highlight as you're typing, and then maybe sort of, like in a IDE where if something's incomplete, it's incomplete and it doesn't format properly?
Let's have a look. So here I'm going to click on this roof face, which I'm using to simulate a sloped patio. And let's go ahead and get, I'll name it patio, just because I don't know how many of these I have, right? And over here in this cell, I'm just going to go ahead and just get an area from it. So I'll start with an equal, and then right away I can insert some functions, right? And so you can see there's an improved formatting here from previous versions. So I know that I want area, so I'll start typing area. And now everything all the functions that have area in them are listed, right? So general, legacy, material, hardscape, specified for landscape. So all of these are sort of organized. Sometimes it's the same command again and again, right? So it's not like there's a separate area for slabs and a separate area for site models, but it's already categorizing anything with the word area, any function with the word area in it. It's categorizing it by what type of object you could use it for, which is awesome. So I'll just, it's all the same. And then here we go. Now I get a description to the right. And if I click show examples, it's going to kick me over to my web browser, I'm pretty sure, and give me, there's quite a few examples. Here we go. No, it's just right here. So there you go. It gives you a little example. Doesn't even have to launch a web browser. So here we go. There's area, and you can see that it's color coded that. And now I'll go ahead and insert criteria. So what it is that I want to pull the area from. And because I already have an object selected, this is not new. It goes ahead and picks layer and class and type, but I could go ahead and choose name, right? And so it's going to automatically pull the name from this object. So I'll hit OK. And there it is. It's giving you, on plan one, on layer plan one, class, site cover paving, and name patio, give me that. So I can just go ahead and delete the layer and class. I don't need that, right? And let's see what happens if I deliberately add parentheses. Yeah, so I've added an extra parentheses. I don't know if you can see that, but it's highlighting it orange. So it's telling me I've got too many parentheses. If I hit return, it's just going to give me the text. It's not going to treat it like a formula. So I'll just delete that parentheses, and here we go. Hey, look at that, 256 square feet. And I think that's like 450 a square foot to pour that these days. I don't know. So, you know, if you're not into worksheets, so what? If you are into worksheets, your life just got longer by about 6 or 7 months because you
Mhm.
you don't have to do all this kind of like nonsense. So, you know, if we had had this in earlier versions, maybe I'd have more hair today. I don't know.
You and me both, brother. You and me both.
All right. So I like that. And then the last thing, this is kind of a short meeting. I hope you guys forgive me, but it's, you know, it's December. The last one that I want to talk about, I'm not sure I want to call it a feature. It's certainly a change. So in old versions of Vectorworks, your snapping palette looked like this. So if you're, that's going to look very familiar if you're not on 2022. And by default, these were the letters that would map to these commands. So your grid snap was the letter A, your angle snap was S, your smart cursor was D, your smart edges was F, your tangent was R, your divided line was E, your intersection was W, and your object snap was Q. These have nothing to do, like, you know, I don't think the letter A is in the word grid. So these were completely counterintuitive, but the way they were developed is just a standard QWERTY keyboard, right? And if you just rotate it 90 degrees, QWER is QWER and ASDF was ASDF. So I think that's how they came up with these shortcuts, like way back in, like, I don't know, MiniCAD 3 or whatever. Which, you know, is not great, but darn it, for decades, these are the shortcuts that, you know, I've memorized. So now I got to move my little zoom palette, which you probably can't see. So now the snaps are no longer a floating palette. They are always and unalterably docked here at the bottom of your status bar. All right, so there they are. Good. And there they will remain.
So they removed any of the other prompts that happen from down that lower right-hand corner.
Correct. Yeah, I think those prompts just show up over here on the left. You can, there's a button now to pause your snap settings, which is the pause button, oddly enough. Of course, you could always suspend your snaps just by holding down the tilde key. And there you go. You get this nice little message. Your snapping is suspended, or I'll let go, or I can click on it. So that's nice. And then there's a little gear wheel. And so you can click on that. Let me close my. And so you can get to your general settings that way. So, I mean, these are, you know, nice improvements. If you double click on a snap, you get its settings just like before, right? Only it's down here, which I personally find problematic, but there you go.
Oh, I like it.
But you can have it.
I always lose mine. It attaches and detaches and it gets so small. Now I always know where to look for it.
Then 2022 is for you. If however you want to go back and add those keyboard shortcuts or any other keyboard shortcuts because your fingers just remember them, you'll just need to go over to your workspace. So tools, workspace, edit the current workspace. And I gotta move you guys again. Right here under keys. So there you go. Now you've got snap to grid, snap to object. So you can see snap to intersection, smart points, right? Smart edge, snap to distances there. Smart edge, that got lost because the F key is being applied to launch quick search. All right. And snap to working plan or snap to tangent, the R got lost because it's belongs to repeat last command, which is another, but you know, you're free to tinker with this however you like. Not a problem. So by default in the shipping workspaces, I believe these are blank. And so you'll need to add them back or add your own version, whatever works for you. I wonder if I can launch quick search with just a question mark. Yeah, I can. Cool. Oh, there you go. So now I can put tangent back to R. Oh, sorry. I can put smart edge back to F. Okay, great. So that's it. Very quick, about half our normal time. Anybody have any questions or need me to go through something again?
No, it's pretty cool. I mean, I haven't seen all of the new for 2022 yet, but yeah.
All right.
To go through all the new features, see if any YouTube tutorials have come out about them, but they don't look complicated.
There's quite a few YouTube tutorials. I think Jonathan Pick just posted some new ones. Matt, you're probably following him.
I am, but I haven't seen his videos in a while. I'm partial to my Francois Levy videos, so I've been boosting those on YouTube and social media.
You have been, yeah. Thank you for flogging me, but no, that's Jonathan's so much better. Anyway, all right. Well, thanks for dropping by, and I guess I'll see you guys next year.
That's right. Have a great holiday.
Yeah.
Yep. Likewise, everybody.
Later.
Francois.